Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. I am opening the first session of the 7th Islamic Economics Workshop organized by ICAM. We have very important guests at this session, Professor Mabit Ali Jarhi and Professor Fahim Khan. I think everyone in this room has at least heard their name. They made significant contribution to Islamic economics and still continue to do so. Thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without their work, our life would be very difficult in the classroom. The first speaker is Professor Mabit Al-Jarhi. He will be sharing with us his latest paper on Islamic macroeconomics. He is going to talk about how to apply Islamic macroeconomic model. And the second speaker, Professor Fahim Khan, will also be sharing with us his latest work on monetary economics and monetary policy. He's going to focus on contemporary Muslim economies aiming at making their economies Islamic. With that, dear audience, I ask that you give your full attention to our distinguished speakers and help me in welcoming the first speaker, Professor Jarhi. You can begin your presentation. We will take questions after our guests finish their work.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم إنا نسألك فتحا قريبا طيبا سهلا مباركا فيه نفحة من علمك وحكمك وقبس من نورك وهداك وسعة من توفيقك وسدادك ورزق من العمل الصالح الخالص لك وحدك لا شريك لك ننفع به الإسلام والمسلمين وننتفع به معهم يا أرحم الراحمين. A little story to start with. I spent maybe a little bit more than 10 days in Qom teaching PhD students in the Qom Institute Islamic Monetary Economics. And the first meeting, I had prepared my material in English, the slides in English. After I spoke for about 15 minutes, somebody hesitantly raised his hand and said, "Would you speak to us in Arabic?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Because we know Arabic more than English. So if there is anybody from Qom that wants me to speak in Arabic, I'd be willing to do it, if they are, of course, if the rest of the attendants agree." Now, this model was published first in 1981, before I think anyone in this group, in this room, was born. And it did not really attract much attention until later on, because at that time, many of our ideas were not mature. Let's see now what the salient features. Money is issued in the form of central bank investment deposits or central deposit certificates, placed with banks on the basis of profit and loss sharing. Okay. Of course, it could be based on musharaka, but mudaraba is much easier to work with here. Returns on CDs would go to the central bank and would end up, this would be seigniorage, would end up in government budget. So nobody benefits from the seigniorage in this model except for the government or the society. No money is lent to government or banks. No lending. This is a purely Islamic macroeconomic model. Finance is available to both public and private. So if the government wants to finance something, it would stand on the line with the public in order to get finances for its own projects. Fractional reserves are replaced with total reserves. Because why is this so? Because it redistributes wealth in favor of bankers. Weakens central bank control of the money supply. As a tool of monetary policy, it leads to instability. So these are 3 points here are almost unquestionable by most economists. The central bank issues central deposit certificates as a negotiable money market instrument, available to and traded by banks and the public. The monetary policy is anchored to its rate of return, RCDC, return on CDC. It seeks absolute price stability, that's the central bank, and as inflation and deflation are inefficient. We know that inflation and deflation are both inefficient and they are unjust. They redistribute income and wealth randomly, and so we do not want inflation or deflation. The public places their savings in investment accounts based on PLS, CDCs, demand deposits for payment purposes, shares, sukuk, fund certificates, and direct investment. The public uses Islamic finance to finance activities. Government activities would be, the pure public goods would be covered by taxes. But quasi-public goods, as income earning activities, can be financed by banks. In addition, that in an Islamic society we have awqaf that takes care supposedly of most of the health and education facilities or services. Of course, we want to go back to our old culture in this respect. Islamic banks and zakah collection and disbursement in Islamic banks would be related to this, to the question of zakah. First of all, they act as custodians of zakah proceeds. Of course, I am saying Islamic banks, which I shouldn't, because in a macroeconomic Islamic system, all banks are Islamic. But in case we have a mixed system, we are using that name. So banks would work as custodians of zakah proceeds, invest zakah proceeds temporarily until they are used, and then use zakah proceeds to finance micro projects whose titles would be transferred to the poor. To make them self-employed and self-sufficient, and that's wealth maintenance. Of course, you notice this is also economic development at the same time. And that's the importance of zakah in this respect. Provide temporary income to the poor until micro projects are processed for them. Zakah and awqaf reduce the size of government budget. So the government budget will not take care of income redistribution, will not take care of much of the education and health services. So we have a much smaller government budget. No integrated debt or bond market, because there is no borrowing and no lending. So we don't have bonds. No risk trading through derivatives or other means. And this is very important for the nature of our financial markets. The central bank uses RCDC, the rate of return on CDCs, to estimate the real rate of growth. Now, what's the relationship between the RCDC and the real rate of growth? It gauges monetary expansion to the RCDC to target absolute price stability. So Islamic finance is probably practiced to avoid, and this is very important because we know that we don't have real Islamic finance. We remember the Jews who went fishing on Saturday, but they said that we did not fish on Saturday. They dug holes on Friday nights before, so that on Saturday the tide would bring the fish into the holes, and on Sunday they collect the fish. And he said, we don't collect fish. And that's what Sharia, members of Sharia board, not all Sharia scholars do that, but members of Sharia board have invented fishing on Sunday for Muslims. And of course, you know, وَالَّذِينَ اعْتَدَوْا مِنْكُمْ فِي السَّبْتِ فَقُلْنَا لَهُمْ كُونُوا قِرَدَةً خَاسِئِينَ. This is the consequence of that, very bad consequence. So we want Islamic finance to be properly practiced. to avoid products by ruses like tawarruq, bay' al-'ayna, debt sale, international murabaha, and the like. The central bank ensures the balance between profit and loss sharing and sale finance as a mix of equity and debt finance. So the monetary management here would be how to anchor the rate of monetary expansion in an Islamic economy. We want to anchor the rate of monetary expansion to the rate of growth, because if it exceeded the rate of growth, we would have inflation. If it is below, probably we'd have deflation. So how do we do that? And especially that we know that it is difficult to estimate the rate of growth. We don't have a ready estimate for this. So the CDC, the Central Deposit Certificate, is an undivided common share in the murabaha pool of assets created by all banks in the economy. Competes with shares, fund certificates, and sukuk. So it is the lowest risk monetary asset thanks to diversification by the central bank. And the asset market is imperfect and uncompetitive. This is just like any asset market in the world. We're not claiming a perfect model. Investors are generally aware of the presence of trade-offs between different investments. So stocks, sukuk, fund shares, investment deposits, etc., all of these are available to investors. They consider the existence of trade-offs as much as possible to their investment. This is how they behave. On the liquidity scale, it stands next to money. The best thing in this model next to money would be CDCs. Its rate of return equals the weighted average of returns on all assets in the mudaraba pools of all banks with balanced equity debt composition. So the rate of return of CDCs, which is actually market determined, it's not like the rate of interest. The rate of interest is not a market determined rate, as many economists would foolishly think. It is an administered price. But the rate of return on CDCs, we have a market for CDCs or for these central deposit certificates, and the market determines that rate according to the expectations of the rates of profits. So the rate of return on CDCs approaches the unobservable average rate of return on national wealth, which is nothing but the real rate of return. Because the real rate of return is nothing but how much our national wealth increases per year. So the difference is the market assessment of risk premium. The difference between the rate of return on CDCs and rate of growth would be the risk premium. And the nature of their issuer is the central bank. So the premium comes from this. And it is diversification too. So as inflation as well as deflation have serious efficiency and redistributional drawbacks, the central bank seeks absolute price stability by setting the rate of monetary expansion to be commensurate with real growth. So this implicitly says that there is some relationship between inflation and deflation and the rate of monetary expansion and the real rate of growth. But we haven't specified this because this is an empirical judgment. But we can say that there is some relationship there. In order to stay within the range that does not cause inflation, the central bank would anchor the rate of monetary expansion to the real rate of growth. But we don't know the real rate of growth. That's to target price stability. So we have two options. So first of all, we can use the RCDC directly as an estimate to the real rate of growth. And we know it is not equal to it. There is some kind of risk premium which we don't know. We might need to estimate. So the central bank can use RCDC to estimate an approximation of the rate of economic growth the rate of growth of the economy would therefore be equal to RCDC plus a risk premium. The risk premium changes from time to time depending on the state of expectations and the performance of the real sector measured by growth in consumption and investment. So the attitude of traders in the influential market also will become here as a variable. Okay. So the financial market has a much smaller amount of speculative trading because we have prohibited all these contracts. All these gambling contracts are no longer usable in our financial market. So we have speculation in the market about asset prices. There are some people who have come many times and said there is no speculation in an Islamic economic system, which is totally wrong. So we will have some speculation about the price expectations and rate of return, but we have no gambling contracts like futures, options, derivatives, etc. No finance or financial market trading. And this is very important because you see, this is the Ponzi scheme that always leads to crisis. When you want to gamble in the market, you borrow. And the broker tells you, you have a margin of 10%, pay it, and then you buy what you want. Okay? Islamic banks do the same. They have what is called shares murabaha. This is one of the inventions of the Sharia board, which is wrong. This is just financing, speculation, financing a Ponzi scheme, deceptive scheme. So we don't want that. So that leads, we have in our economy speculative activities highly subdued and limited in size. So in this economy, in an environment of highly subdued speculation, the difference between the real rate of growth and RCDC and the real rate of growth and RCDC will depend upon the state of expectations. Okay? So we postulate here that the real rate of growth is equal to which is G. There is some kind of a difference between the rate of growth and RCDC. They are not equal. So in a non-linear function, so the difference between them, so this is an inequality here. G minus RCDC is a non-linear function of the rate of growth of investment and consumption and a proxy variable for the general market index in order to have a measure of expectations whether the market is going up or going down, whether we have bears or bulls. So in other words, G minus RCDC is a function of the real rate of growth of investment, the rate of growth of consumption, the rate of growth of financial market, general price index. The estimated real growth, which is G, of course, once we estimate the difference, once we estimate the premium, then we have the real rate of growth. And we can tie monetary expansion directly to G. Why? But we know that our estimate will not be perfect. So we have to keep an eye on the rate of inflation. If we expand the money supply by a certain rate and we find there is inflation, then we know that we have overshot our estimate. So we reduce monetary growth and vice versa. So there is this guide here there. So since the relationship between monetary expansion and real growth is uncertain, we must continue to monitor the rate of inflation. And if inflation is greater than zero, we reduce monetary expansion and vice versa. Okay? Now, monetary management. Relying on RCDC only, we are saying that the central bank, you don't have to go through this inequality and estimate the premium, the risk premium. You can just use only the RCDC. It can be useful estimate of the rate of growth, the estimation method itself is not perfect. So you're substituting an imperfect way for another imperfect way. The central bank will have to monitor inflation for fine-tuning the monetary expansion in any case. So a less costly method is to anchor monetary expansion to the RCDC directly and monitor inflation. And also if inflation is greater than zero, we reduce monetary expansion and vice versa. So this is the other alternative. Monetary management in mixed systems. Suppose a country like Turkey, which has a mixed system, wants to switch to an Islamic monetary system. Of course, this goes for any Muslim country or even the United States. Of course, that sounds wild, but they might see the benefits. When Islamic and conventional finance are practiced side by side, usually monetary authorities ignore Islamic finance in their conventionally exclusive policies. So we have here a share in the market, a small corner in the market called participatory banks, but they are not considered in monetary policy. Should the authorities opt for an all-inclusive monetary policy, it would have to take some serious measures. Of course, you can say that this percentage of participatory banks or participation banks is very small. In Qatar, it's about 30% or more. In Saudi Arabia, it's about 40%. But still, Islamic finance is ignored in monetary policy. Absolutely prohibit financing speculation, and particularly through trading at the margin, and of course, shares murabaha, as I mentioned you. This step of financial reform facilitates monetary management. So if you want to include Islamic finance monetary policy, reform it first. If not, using the rate of return on CDC to estimate the rate of growth would result in a distant approximation, very bad estimate. So gauging monetary policy will not work for stability. Now if you agreed with me that this should be the monetary policy in an Islamic economic system, then we need a roadmap. And this is the roadmap would be what? Our Islamic economics agenda. First, we streamline Islamic finance through issuing an Islamic finance product handbook. Of course, I would say that also maybe firing Sharia boards, but I really don't want to be so cruel. Train Islamic banks employees on implementing the true Islamic finance. Of course, I just want to tell you that I'm working on this product handbook, which will make many of our currently or common Islamic finance products unlawful. Implementing it through Islamic finance, amend the banking laws and regulation to include specific rules that enable Islamic banks to operate at a higher level of compliance and to improve their governance. Join efforts of entrepreneurs, Islamic bankers, and academicians to improve the Islamic finance sector and provide more resources to businesses. Allow Islamic banks windows and branches only as first step towards full Islamic banking. If it's not going to be an Islamic bank, then don't allow a window or a branch. More involvement of investment account holders in bank management. And I am campaigning strongly for the representation of investment account holders on the General Assembly or Board of Directors of Islamic banks. So they will become very different type of firms. They would be banks controlled by investment depositors. The majority of Sharia board should be Islamic economists. So don't fire them, but let us in. Let people like me who understand both economics and Sharia, hopefully, be members of the Sharia board. So we have less turbans and more white hair in the boards. So because they failed to prevent or to stop process. Implement total reserves within 2 to 3 years. As a required reserve ratio is raised, then we put more resources in central deposits. So we have a replacement here. Establish awqaf funds, okay? And those proceeds would be invested by Islamic banks into suitable industrial, agricultural, and commercial investments for public benefit. Use income gained from awqaf to establish an education waqf to spend all its resources on education. Then also have health waqf to spend also all its resources on health services, and infrastructure waqf to invest also all of its resources on infrastructure, improving our infrastructure. And we established 2 zakah funds to finance macro projects and to also provide income maintenance. The reduction in government expenditures resulting from zakah and awqaf, we use it to reduce the tax burden on the poor. And we established sukuk funds also to invest its resources on several, all of our economic activities, agriculture, animal and wealth, and so on. Okay? So we have a roadmap here. We establish an Islamic financial market as part of the, maybe if it is in Turkey, it would be of Istanbul. If it's in the United States, it would be a part of the New York Stock Exchange. Okay? With proper standard for shares, sukuk, funds, and relevant listings and trading rules. All sukuk should be based on genuine Islamic finance modes, because you know most of the sukuk in the market, if not all, are not Sharia compliant. They should be marketed at the retail level, because sukuk usually are issued in chunks of $250,000. Who is going to buy sukuk for this? So you and I are automatically excluded from the market. So we want to be able to buy sukuk for 10 Turkish liras, if possible, domestically and internationally. So, and we promote sukuk funds, like share funds. Start apportioning the money supply as investment deposits in Islamic banks. Why not place the money supply as time deposits? Because time deposits are loans and earning the rate of interest which would be too low as a seigniorage. So there is no guarantee that conventional banks would finance real sector activities through lending. Once Islamic finance reaches 25% of the total financial assets, then monetary policy would be based on CD and CDCs, and absolute price stability should be gradually introduced. So this is our advice to the Turkish Central Bank. I just want to, this is concludes my, Mr. Chairman, my lecture. I just want to have a small concluding remark that I am trying to get Islamic economics, first of all, to avoid the neoclassical model, the perfectly competitive model which has automatic equilibrium, stability, and so on, and it is totally unrealistic, and it has made so many mistakes, and we were educated, actually people like me have been educated into this system. So we want to move to disequilibrium models, price search models, and so on. And we want to make our Islamic economics more, has a wider range than what it is now. It's now mostly Islamic finance. So I am working on a textbook on this. And this textbook has reached about 30 chapters. It's more than 1,000 pages. And it will be out, inshallah, in summer. ASBO, the Ankara Social Preliminary University, will publish the book. It will be available on internet for free, so nobody will have to pay. And I would like to see universities all over the world adopting this textbook so that it would replace the fiqh analysis and historical analysis that we have had for a long time. Thank you very much. Wallahu a'lam.
Dr. Jari's very educative speech has inspired me a lot, and everyone. That is an ideal situation, assuming that we'll be having an Islamic economy, truly Islamic economy, and Dr. Jari will be Minister of Finance or Prime Minister who can fight the IMF and other agencies who do not let you do the way you want your economy to be.
You can place it in the pocket.
So I will be more pragmatic, assuming that the current situation cannot be changed very rapidly, and we'll have to realize certain assumptions, certain realities before we suggest what should be the monetary issues and monetary policy. Though I will be mentioning some theoretical perspective in the ideological framework, but ultimately I will go to the more pragmatic solution for the present-day Muslim economies with respect to monetary issues. We must realize that Muslim countries now are forced to understand monetary issues in the economic framework based on Adam Smith's theory on wealth of nations. It's a reality. Whatever we study about anything relating to economics, we are constrained to depend on Adam Smith economics. Economics and monetary issues have never been a subject in Islamic history for more than 1,000 years of the civilized rule in the world. This has been, economics is perhaps the only science that West developed without its roots in Islamic history, with no human considerations in its objectives. It would be hard to assume that any science can be developed or invented or discovered without an objective for the humanity, for the improvement of humanity. Economics is the only thing that was developed and invented without any humanity considerations, except for the wealth, and that wealth is the focus. And everybody is like a drug, just focus on wealth, maximize it, use it, and sleep. So that type of economics, I think it is only the economics that has been created for that purpose. Adam Smith's theory, invented only 250 years ago, money did not give the role to money in real economy. Even that modernized type of theory, the money had no role in the real economy. It was Keynes who described the role of money and led the economy to create money market. And that was not very far in the past, less than in centuries, 1 century. Banking system later on, which was again very recent development, banking system later on started giving increasing role to money in the economy, making money market to grow at a rate higher than the market of real goods. Now let us be clear, what perspective we can discuss the monetary issues. What is our perspective, besides being an ideological perspective that Dr. Jari was mentioning? Let us be more pragmatic perspective. To suggest monetary policy, what should be the monetary policy for Muslim countries? If yes, if monetary policy has to be a policy in Muslim countries, then what should be the objective of policy that we have in mind? What do we want to achieve? Any priorities in the objectives of growth, stability, and inflation, or to resolve economic problems like alleviating poverty or reducing inequality? These are various problems that economy is facing. Now, what should be the objective of our economy out of these 3, 4, 5, or 6 objectives? Where is our priority? Where should we stand? Growth is our priority, or stability is priority, and inflation is priority. And we cannot solve all these problems by just single monetary tools. Every objective has to have a tool, and if we have 6 or 7 objectives for the economy, then we need 6 and 7 objectives, 7 tools to solve that. So we have to be more realistic that in the present condition, how many tools we can have in Islamic framework and to achieve what objective. And then, of course, an economic model has to be in our mind. What is the overall paradigm of our economy? How it works, how the economy works. Ideally, Jari did not explain that paradigm, but it is implicit that what he has in mind. But this is something we have to be very explicitly in mind, that what is our model, how the economy works, how the people take decisions, how the people make economic activities. For Adam Smith, money created no monetary issue until Keynes described speculative demand for money. Interest rate can regulate money demand, and monetary policy can solve problem of unemployment. Now, this is the perspective that we usually have in our mind when we are discussing the monetary issue. Dr. Jari and the idealistic framework, this perspective does not exist. There is no speculative money demand based on the interest rate. And I hope you will not disagree if I say that all economists, including Muslim economists, religiously follow Keynesian model to make the monetary policy. No matter how much we think we do have in our perspective that thing. Dr. Zahra Afshari is presenting the paper of DSG model in Islamic framework, describing Keynesian version of the economy, and let us see that how she explains it. All versions of Keynesian economics until now are based on Adam Smith's fundamental paradigm that economics is about wealth creation. This is what we should have in mind in order to suggest a monetary policy different from what is in the current objectives. Adam Smith paradigm, the philosophy, what Adam Smith assumed the people, how they behave. The rational human beings in the Adam Smith economics, human beings create wealth in self-interest. This is the his perception how people do economic activities. They can do it in best and efficient way if they work within only market system. This is what people want, and this can happen. This happens, not only can happen, it happens only through market system, a competitive market system. World is already fed up with such persistent perspective. This is the perspective that all the time has been in mind, and now the world has unable to solve any of these problems, economic problems, neither growth, nor stability, nor inflation, nor poverty, elevation. No problem has been solved with this perspective. If we keep thinking under this paradigm, then we cannot do much in Islamic perspective on economic behavior. Islam gave the world perspective on economic behavior. This perspective that Adam Smith created, and we are religiously following it in all our education and policy making, this perspective we have to read and think and see what is the perspective that Islam provides us through the Quran and Sunnah. Let us think in Islamic perspective about economics. Economics is not merely about how to create wealth. This is very clear. This is the focus of Adam Smith economics, and Islam. This is not the focus in the economics that we learn from Quran and Sunnah. It is about how to use wealth, meeting needs of fuqara and masakin, meeting the needs of those people who cannot operate in market, eliminate zulm from economic activities. This is the paradigm that we find in the Islamic economic principles. Also, not allowing circulation of wealth among rich only, and that rationalize and balance the use of wealth, avoiding israf. These are the key elements in the perspective that we have for an economy in an ideal sense in Islamic perspective. Economics is not merely in a market, it exists beyond market also. There is so much economics in every society, whether it is Western or American or traditional society or Islamic society. There exists beyond market. Economics exists. And what is economics? Economics is creating wealth and using wealth and saving wealth and etc. If we go through the Quranic instructions on economic matters, we find only a few ayat, a couple of ayat on market that relate to activities about creating wealth, focusing on not creating zulm. There are 2 or 3 ayats we see in the Quran about the market that la taqulu amwalakum bainakum bil batili illa an takuna tijaratan tadradin minkum. And the only thing, the batil. What is batil? That you don't create zulm in creating wealth. And all other ayats, there are so many ayats on economics. Market is only a couple of ayats. The rest of the ayats they relate to economics in using wealth beyond market, focusing on needs of poor, reconciling hearts, helping debtors, and etc. And instruments for this are not price. The instruments for this are infaq, zakah, and ushur. Also, economics says that human instinct of self-interest only can make economic activity. Self-interest in Adam Smith economics, in all our economics, is that we work on self-interest. Yes, we work on self-interest. Everybody has works in self-interest, and Islam has nothing against, and Quran has never prohibited that. Self-interest is okay, but we forget that self-interest is not merely selfish. Self-interest has 2 aspects. Purely selfish, that I need my happiness only. But there is another aspect of the self-interest is that I am happy if others are happy. I am happy if the environment makes me happy. So the self-interest, the happiness of others is in the self-interest in human instinct. Besides the rule of the law in Islam, self-interest has both aspects, benevolent self-interest and selfish interest. Everyone cares for others, society, and they care for society, they care for environment, they care for harmony, and they care for peace in self-interest. All these things are in self-interest, not in the interest of others merely. Selfish self-interest requires market to best satisfy selfish needs. Market has, people have developed the institution of market in order to serve the selfish self-interest. But what is the institution that economics defines for benevolent self-interest doing efficiently? Adam Smith economics, the economics that we learned from the very beginning, has nothing to tell us that how do we satisfy our benevolent self-interest in creating wealth and in using wealth and in saving wealth. Economic activities require institutions to best achieve all objectives in best way. Market is the best institution for selfish self-interest. Market does not allow you to be benevolent, to make the happiness of others in making an economic activity. And Islam also, the Quran, we don't find, yes, market in market, you have to have the selfish self-interest, and there is nothing wrong about that. But what about the activities beyond market? You want to spend some wealth beyond market also. You want efficiently. You want to spend wealth for environment, for society, for removing poverty. But of course, you cannot do in market. You are not allowed in market by your self-interest also, and there is nothing rule to say that market should do it. Then what institution will do it? Currently, the government and non-government institutions are trying to do this. NGOs, we call government NGOs or public sector economics. They are trying to help human beings to solve their benevolent self-interest in the economy. Islamic system has shown a different institution, just like the important institution as market. Islam, in Islamic history, the system of Awqaf developed. Market was not developed by rules. It was developed by the human instinct for selfish interest. But what was the institution that was developed to satisfy the benevolent self-interest? Awqaf, the history says that this is Awqaf system. This is a system of infaq fi sabilillah and zakat and all these things that will take care of your benevolent self-interest. Currently, this system, market is very active now. Market is accelerating rapidly, but this institution that was that developed because of this instinct of benevolent self-interest, this stopped developing. Market has been made to be developed and supported through various ancillary institutions. We have equity market, we have stock market, we have banking institutions. There are so many institutions that are helping market to flourish and help the people create wealth efficiently. But such institutions that no institutions are coming up because Muslim world has been in colonial rule for more than 200, 300 years. So those institutions could not develop with this motive that let us develop an institution, the institution of Waqaf, whatever it is, to satisfy the benevolent self-interest. Market has faced several problems, and we know that people have gotten Nobel Prizes in solving the problems of market. The information cost, the transaction cost, the problem of information asymmetry. These have been solved to make market more efficient. But the same problem exists in satisfying the benevolent self-interest also. There is information cost, there is transaction cost. What institution will solve the problem? That activity has remained absent, and nobody has been allowed to do this. The colonial system in India, Pakistan, they destroyed this institution, and Khilafat-e-Osmaniya in a role. The system was working very well, but then since then it has not stopped working like that. So these are my perspective for a model for understanding monetary issues in Muslim countries. This is the basic institution. Dr. Jari has gone in more detail, but in the fundamental level, this should be in our mind when we are studying the monetary policy or monetary issues. Keynesian model in its recent version is normally considered relevant to consider monetary issues in Muslim countries, and Dr. Zahra Dayas, a current version of Keynesian model may give some insight that how we can study or how can we analyze our economy in this perspective, fundamental perspective that we have within the Keynesian model. My suggestion, however, would be to consider Islamic economy a two-segment economy, a market economy and beyond market economy. And this is a very efficient way for an economy. At micro level, it may seem that it is not an efficient model, but at macroeconomic level, at macroeconomic framework and macroeconomic policy, this model was appreciated great because the two-sector model, it was developed by independently by two economists, Mahalanobis in India and Feldman in Russia. That there are two sectors. One sector will grow slowly. The other sector will grow more. But ultimately, the whole economy will grow in right directions, in taking all objectives, not merely creation of wealth and growth and stability. But both these models failed. In India, this two-sector model failed, and in Russia, this two-sector model failed. It was not based on the Islamic principle that I am suggesting. But this, if we apply the same two-sector model, a beyond market sector, taking care of benevolent instinct first and selfish interest later on, if economic policy is developed on this perspective, then sure, economy will be slow down initially. But ultimately, in the same model that has been proved by mathematically, and Dr. Jari, very good in mathematics, will also that ultimately economy starts growing. This is what I mentioned in my first article on macroeconomic consumption also. So I just suggest making beyond market activities work efficiently and sufficiently, even if it implies slowing down growth initially. This is an objective that every economic policy maker will have to keep in mind. This will be a bit hard decision. Nobody will let you grow less. IMF will not allow you to grow less because you have to pay the loans also. But this is a crucial decision that an economy will have to take, that let us first take care of. And this, I must say, this is what is happening in Pakistan. Despite the government, a very efficient government, they are succumbed by the IMF pressure that no, growth is first, let growth be. And it is creating inflation and creating a havoc in the country, and people are angry with the government, despite the government is very honest government and trying to help the government. This is what is happening. So the first question is, what is our model? Keep that model in mind. The second is that all economic principles in Islam require humane consideration. This is absent from the economic theory that we currently have. Everything has to be done with humane considerations. Market, human consideration is there. So that does not allow interest to be there because it doesn't have a human consideration. Using wealth, you have to have human consideration. Monetary policies in Muslim countries where interest or quasi-interest based, like markup based, money market continues and will continue to exist in Muslim economies in any foreseeable future. So we have to meet, how to meet this Islamic requirement that be humane in all your activities in monetary policy. Under such environment, it will be a difficult task, but still some considerations need to be discussed in this workshop. That how to make our economy more human, human considerations. Dr. Shamim's paper may have some insight into it because he's discussing the time value of money. I'll see that how he has created that into it. If Islamic banking is possible, then why not Islamic monetary market? This is also an issue Let's say that Islamic banking is now in Sharia-based principles, but monetary policy cannot be on Islamic principle. Why not? This is an issue that we need to discuss in our workshop. This third issue that will come beside this, the third issue, how to modify current macroeconomic framework to make monetary policy Islamic. This will be the issue that we have to face. What if a country needs a loan from IMF? I think hardly there will be any Muslim country that says, no, we don't need, we'll never need any loan from IMF. But IMF has now started a standard format for macroeconomic framework to guarantee with the loan is paid back with interest in the required time period. We cannot go beyond that macroeconomic framework. That standard, IMF published it, it is available. I have given the link also where you can see it. You cannot go beyond that. Macroeconomic framework will have to be in this framework as long as Muslim economies are in this level of economics. This framework constraints. What is wrong with this constraint, this framework is that the countries in achieving objectives of their choice of the economy, they cannot keep the objectives of the economy of their choice. Objectives have to be the IMF objective. IMF objective is growth and stability. Why? So that loan can be repaid back. Now in this, help of fuqara and masakin, help of environment, help of development, economic development, it doesn't come into it. Framework. You cannot put it into it, IMF will stop it. No, you cannot do it now, you can do it later, first pay back the loan. So we cannot add human consideration in creating and using wealth beyond market targets in the economy in our macroeconomic framework. So then what should we do? You can see the current macroeconomic framework of Pakistan. I don't have a time here to show you. It is exactly according to the IMF standard, and there is nothing in it that could solve the other objectives of the economy, particularly how to eliminate poverty. 30% of the population is hungry, starving, and you cannot put it. There is a chapter in the plan on poverty alleviation, removing the poverty, but that chapter is beyond macroeconomic framework. Now, macroeconomic framework uses market to achieve the objective. The objective of poverty you cannot achieve from the macroeconomic framework. You have to have a different framework for that. And what we can do is we can make waqf to be a part of macroeconomic, or we plan the economy in two directions, as I said, two-sector economy. One is economic growth model. The other is economy where other objectives are promoted. The macroeconomic framework, the growth objective, of course, it can follow the market purely. As IMF says, yes, it can be done. IMF cannot make market perfectly competitive, but Islam makes market perfectly competitive. The fiqh on fiqh al-mal and fiqh al-biyu, they are nothing but making market competitive. So that will be no problem. We can make market competitive if we want to be Islamic, and growth will be there. But then we have to make the other sector of the economy, which is the social development and social problem solving. And we have an Iqaf institution that should work as effectively as market develops. And the problem why market is not, Waqf is not working like that. This is an Islamic model. Everybody is willing to spend something. Everybody wants to do infaq fi sabilillah beyond zakat. But the system, you cannot use it in macroeconomic framework because you never developed that macroeconomic framework. The problem is the legal system. In India, Pakistan, this model was strictly restricted only to masajid and graveyards and mazars and all these things. It was not allowed to do anything else, and it is still the same. The Aqaf law cannot make people motivated to do some infaq fi sabilillah as a sadaqah jariyah, as a perpetual benefit for the life. I'm trying to. So we need rapidly changing socio-economic environment required radical issues. Credit creation is the same, basic problem. Dr. Jari has mentioned something about it also. And it may have benefits, but its sins are more than the benefits. Just like khamr. It has a benefit, but its sins are much more than that. Similarly, the credit creation is, we have to rationalize that policy also. And there are several suggestions that why credit creation has to be used by bankers' benefits. Why it is not used for social benefits? Why government has to finance from taxes? Why doesn't it uses the credit creation by the banks to use the public sector budget? I think Mohammed Siraj is presenting his speech on this subject, and we will see this. So some recommendations for this house, I have following suggestions. That in the current circumstances, what best we can do. The interest rate terminology should be replaced by any appropriate Islamic term. It may be seemingly interest rate. Just get rid of this word interest and riba. It makes people sinful. Change it, make government say, no, this is not interest, this is riba. Saudi Arabia is doing it and they are doing it, everybody is satisfied. So it just creates a feeling that, okay, we can do something in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this. So even if it is just in terms of words, change it. Central bank in some way relate this term to real market time related transactions, benchmark or LIBOR. Dr. Shami will tell us, he is talking about so much about that commodity allows interest rate or time value of money. So how to relate this LIBOR to commodity market rather than to money market. Replace the terminology also in non-Islamic banking. In Pakistan now there is a terminology markup and ijara and etc. But the other banks, majority of the banks use still the interest rate. Let them also use only the word markup. Why should they say interest? So that later on when they change it, the people are ready to accept it. And the world is also ready to accept it. Okay, nothing is important happening. The other recommendation is reducing dependency of economy on loans and credits. All investment comes through loans. Why it has to come through loans? We can easily make it in Islamic perspective as equity-based or something like that. Government can always give various guarantees and things. Government is allowed to do that. So this is the other issue that we have to do this. And role of Sharia scholars in monetary policy, Dr. Jari also mentioned that it has to be they has to come into this. This also, Sharia should be involved. Sharia decides the objective of the economy under objectives of Sharia. Objective of Sharia gives certain definite objectives. So, and who can explain that under the current circumstances, what should be the priorities under Islamic principles that will make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy. So, the essential Sharia board needed to include Sharia scholars and, as Dr. Jari was also mentioning, economists. And a deputy governor at the level as partner governor should take care of the monetary policy and is established under Sharia. And this is the most important issue that I want. The use concept of WACF to develop a specialized financial institution. Waqf can become a financial institution. This is the problem of the government. How can we get funds from the funds for social development, social problems? Waqf can be made an institution that people have plenty of. I have estimated, Dr. Manzar Kahaf has estimated that how much people want to spend and potentially are willing to do it. In Pakistan, every country they have shown it 1% or 2% GDP is available in the hands of the people to spend for the economy. But the institutions are not there, and this Waqf is an institution that can do it. Monetary policy and Sharia Central Board, and I'll stop it because chairman will not allow me to talk further. So, Subhanakallahumma bihamdika, nashhadu la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Okay, we'll take one question at a time. We'll go one by one. Please say speaker's name when you ask. Let's take first question. Okay. Is there anyone would like to ask or comment? Please.
If there is 100% reserve requirement for the banks against their deposits, so how then there would be a credit creation process in the economy? So then there won't be a financial intermediation role of the banks.
Credit creation, banks are doing credit creation. If you do 100% reserve requirement, credit creation will stop.
Yes.
Then how will you make this investment and growth?
Okay. يعني it's on. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. You see, the money supply under partial reserve system, the money supply is about 4 or 5 or 10 times, depending on the required reserve ratio of the monetary base. Now, when you operate under 100% reserves, the monetary base equals the money supply, and you don't need money credit creation here. You are watching for the real rate of growth, and usually you see the relationship between the money supply and the rate of growth. It's just like money facilitates trade, facilitates transactions, and more growth requires more money. So when the central bank issues as much money as required by the real rate of growth, for example, the rate of monetary expansion is equal to the real rate of growth, then you have all the money you need for growth. So which had been in the past, in the previous system under fractional reserve, had been created as what is called credit creation, which was actually loaned by bankers, and they stomached the rate of interest on that. So you still have resources to finance, and the seigniorage would be going to the government and to the society, not to bankers.
Let me explain very simple. Why credit creation? You need money supply. Government can print it. Why to depend on and this is a classical model that money you don't have to create credit by giving that power to the bank.
Sure, go ahead.
I think what I read your there is your article. What he's saying is that there will be investment account and there is a deposit account, a pure deposit account, saving account, or you can call it checking account, demand deposits, and this is I think Professor Mirakhor and what is the name, the Pakistani guy?
Zamir Iqbal.
No, even before that, the first article.
Muhammad Khan. Yes.
Mohsin Khan.
Hassan Khan.
The idea was that, and the other people have also said that if you are just depositing the money, for not, you don't want to invest, this is just you want to keep as a safekeeping. that money will be 100% reserve. Okay, 100, there will be 100% reserve requirement. This has come from some Western scholars as well. So you don't touch that money. Then and what you have said, Professor Jari, that the most important is the investment account. The investment account, from the investment account, if I have some money in investment account, that money has to be used by by somebody. And bank will be handling as an intermediary in the investment account. Money in the investment account will be used by the bank to give, to invest it with the producers and traders, so to create wealth. And that's why he's saying that, the importance of the investor account holders will become very, very important in Islamic system. And that's why he is also suggesting that they should play a bigger role in controlling the banks as well. Because, this is their money which will be utilized. Plus, he has also said in his paper that, and which has, I have also, in one of my old paper has said that the central bank will have an account, just our account we have in a commercial bank. Central bank have an account in every commercial bank, and every Islamic bank. So at any time, there more investment demand is coming from, the central bank will put more money into its account, into that particular bank, so that any money which is required for genuine growth of the economy will always be there. And so there will be not any problem of liquidity. There will not be any liquidity problem, but there will not be any excess liquidity either, because the main role of any central bank, to my understanding, should be to stability of the prices, to control the prices. And we are talking New Zealand, the governor of the central bank will be fired if the inflation rate goes beyond 2% or something. They have already controlled it. Their job is the first job of any central bank is the stability of price. And of course, then comes any liquidity, any genuine liquidity for growth is needed. So this scheme that the central bank is ready at any time to provide any amount of money which is needed, and it should come from central bank through their investment account, through again their investment account into commercial bank. That should be the scheme. But my question I'm sorry I took more time. My question to Professor Jari is that you are still supporting murabaha. You are not saying that there will be no murabaha you are still saying that the rate of return would be determined by sukuk and blah blah, and also murabaha. Why you are not taking out murabaha from the whole scheme? This is my point, which I will also inshallah.
The first question is that credit creation is not an issue. Bank can do investment deposits, and they will be by printing money. Probably this is what I said. And central bank can give money to commercial banks to use it for investment. So just responding to yes, 100% reserve.
What's the question?
Investment, from where investment will be done when there is credit creation, the reserve requirement is 100%.
Use the central bank would become the largest holder of investment deposits in banks through the money it supplies in central deposits. And these central deposits are money available for investment by Islamic banks. Of course, hopefully, under the regulation of the central bank, Islamic banks will use this money to create assets, to invest. This money is allocated on market, according to market criteria. In other words, the bank would look at the profitability, at the feasibility, and also whatever directives it gets from the central bank regarding social interest, the interest of the society. So this money, it is just transformed into assets in the Mudaraba pool, what we call the Mudaraba pool of Islamic banks. So it is from the printing machine, the money printing machine, to the Mudaraba pool. That's how the investment process is going. And of course, this investment process guided by regulation from the central bank according to maybe development objectives, sectoral priorities, etc.
Okay, only one more question. Go ahead, please. Okay.
Thank you so much, professors, for your presentation. My question is, why are Muslim majority countries, particularly those that have taken interest in developing Islamic economics, Islamic banking, why are they reluctant to implement the Islamic mode of monetary policy? Why?
Why?
Are they reluctant? Why are they not accepting the Islamic monetary system?
Yes,
monetary policy?
why IMF, when we take loans, whether it is from IMF or from commercial loans for investment and for growth, then you have to show that you will have enough growth and enough stability to pay back the loan. And that they say you cannot do if your system is not interest-based. This is their condition. So if you want loan, you have to have it.
All right, I understand. But from the articles I've read, I've seen that many Islamic banks have a lot of liquidity. And actually, the problem that they have is spending this money. So the money is already there in these Islamic countries.
Yes.
So why then can they implement the Islamic monetary system?
Yes, that liquidity is very small compared to the economy. There's only 15%, less than 15% banking system, so the liquidity is not enough. But that, even if it is 100% liquidity, the problem is how to invest. The investors are also not willing to do profit loss sharing basis. They say, no, take the fixed interest rate and just give us the loan. So that is another issue, yes.
All right, thank you so much.
But your question is right.
Okay, all right, one more question. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm Abdur Rashid. I will just want a little more explanation from Dr. Fahim. You presented the two segment model. One is market-based, another one is beyond the market-based. A couple of the things I just want to highlight, and then I want your view. How will work the market model? Based on classical, new Keynesian, or we need to develop a new system, what is in the Islamic system for market economy system? And beyond the market, what you said, how it will work? And what would be the link between these two? Yes, at initially, the growth would be low, but how much it will take the time? If I am not IMF, I'm not commercial banks, I'm just a simple common man, investor. So I want return. I have money, I can spend the money for two purposes. One is just for the raza of Allah. Okay, I don't want because I want in akhirat, whatever I will spend. So I don't care about the return. But the second part of the money, what I want to use for investment, definitely I will look at the risk and return. And when I will look at the risk and return, how much it will take the time. So what you presented, whether that model explain these things or consider these things, or we need to yet have to think about that. Thank you.
Okay, very, very good question, Mahela. Listen, I could not explain it because the time is, it's very clear. I did not say that stop the market or don't let it do. Do as it is doing, let it do it. There is extra potential available with the people in the people for infaq fi sabilillah. And I estimated for Pakistan, I estimated it is $10 billion every year. People want to potential, and the proof is that when they spent the money during earthquake and when the nuclear test was done, so much money came from that. There is no institution to utilize that for beyond market activities of the people. And that institution is Waqf institution. Waqf institution is not working because nobody is trying to promote it like market is being promoted. So all that function that people are willing to spend in infaq fi sabilillah, they cannot do it for infaq. It has to go to the market because that is more efficient to collect the money. So your question is right, they require the system, two systems, Waqf system and market system, and they should develop simultaneously.
Okay, our time is over. I have to close the session. Thank you very much for your participation.